So The Killer is a David Fincher film starring Michael Fassbender as a very cold, very calculating, very elite assassin. It's modern day, hyper modern day, including product placements from McDonald's, Amazon, DoorDash, Starbucks. Yeah, like tons of FedEx is in here at one point. And our man is a globetrotting loner who is simply taking jobs and completing them to the most cold and calculating fashion possible. Following a very exciting intro scene, the movie opens with almost like a 15-minute like quiet expose of him narrating to himself as he's like doing yoga and scoping out like a hit from a rooftop across a street. It's very low key up until a hit goes wrong. And suddenly our cold, calculating, always on the mark man is off the mark. And he's thrown into chaos as this world of mercenaries and hitmen begins to crumble onto him like a house of cards. The movie stars Michael Fassbender in his primary role, has a couple other guest stars that I think are probably worth just seeing in the theater. It's a pretty small cast, and frankly, it's a pretty small budget. As Fincher's second film in his deal with Netflix, was barely in theaters. Now it's on Netflix. Most importantly, Andy, I've got to know, what do you think of The Killer?
Man, this movie is totally wasted on Netflix. Get to a theater to see this if you can. I think it's maybe going to play for another week in theaters. Really enjoyed this. I wasn't sure where it was going initially. It starts off very slow, like Michael Fassbender has this big long monologue about how you have to be disciplined in mind, body, and soul. He's got all these very kind of unique idiosyncrasies to prepare for this hit, and he's talking through all his strategies, and he's just like waxing philosophical about how the mind that it takes to accomplish this, and then it all goes wrong, which is kind of hilarious in its own way. And then we have a killer on the run, but also trying to exact some revenge. And it's so methodical, but also it's shot so well. It has moments of really good action, really good suspense. It's shot on location in Paris, the Dominican Republic, elsewhere that I can't remember, but it's great that they actually went to these places.
Somewhere there.
Yeah. Really enjoyed it in all aspects: the cinematography, writing, acting. Like I said, I wasn't sure when it first started. I was like, I hope this whole movie isn't like this, and it's not. And I was really thrilled by it.
Yeah, the ads for The Killer say in big letters when they're promoting David Fincher, they say from the director of Seven, Fight Club, and Gone Girl. Those are perfect features from his filmography to kind of describe the tone of what's going on here. The Killer is a tight wire action thriller, and it is very clamped down for most of the time because our character, the Killer, played by Fassbender, is like a clenched jaw individual. He's just constantly, I don't know, he's constantly exacting, and he's right, and he's thinking through things. The film's actually based on a graphic novel. I didn't know this is a nearly 20-year-old project called The Killer. It's a French novel, I think. And reportedly, Fincher said after Mank in 2020, he wanted to, he had a number of ideas for projects, and he had talked with Michael Fassbender about doing something, and Fassbender really fell in love with the idea. Fassbender got super into the idea, actually, so much so that he kind of talked Fincher into doing it with him. He was like, no, I think this is the role I want. Like, this guy is neat. Like, this character is really exacting, really cold, very impersonal. IMDb also claims here, and I'd have to rewatch it. They claim Fassbender never blinks on screen. I don't know if I believe that. There's definitely some terse scenes where I feel like you could catch him getting punched in the face or something, and maybe that doesn't count. Killer is like very rigid, and Fincher's known for this in his filmography. He's a tripod director. 90% of the time when you watch a Fincher movie, the camera is locked down on a tripod, like every time. It might roll or pan or dolly, but like it's not moving. Surprising amount of handheld in The Killer. You could see it in the trailer, which is weird. I didn't expect things to feel as kinetic as they do, but I think as our man starts to tumble backwards through what he thought was a normal job, suddenly, things start to feel uncertain, and that's where I think going handheld's a smart move.
Yeah, the style is so much about this film really pulls you in, and like the cinematography and camera work is definitely one of them that we get again great views of these places of this kind of Paris skyline where he's overlooking several buildings, trying to scope out his hit. When we move to the uh, Dominican Republic, it's a much warmer, kind of laid back feel, and it mimics the character. It's very cold and calculating and very precise, which mimics our character's way of going about his job.
I think one of the things that's so interesting about this story that I think on its face probably sounds a little generic, right? Like, 'cause it does, right? Oh, a hitman whose job goes wrong and then has to get out, you know? Like we've all seen that movie before, right? But this one is different. And I think part of the reason is because like it's so grounded in what a reality would be for a person who does this stuff. Like, my man has an Apple Watch that tracks his heartbeat, and he uses that effectively when he's performing hits. That's part of it. He also has an MP3 player that's completely offline with a surprising amount of the Strokes in it. I think David Fincher's a Strokes fan. I don't know if you know that, Andy. Lots of that. Listens to music real loud. If he's getting breakfast in the morning, he gets a breakfast on a bun from McDonald's and skips the bun, you know, and most importantly, he has
Low
this
carb.
exacting he has this exacting monologue, which I think is comes straight from the book. It's just very, very cold way to look at the world, like this very exacting understanding idea that while he is a hitman and he is performing hits and eliminating people, that like ultimately in the big universal scheme of things, like it hardly matters. People die every day, right? Somebody slips and falls down their stairs. Somebody has a heart attack in the grocery store. Like, he's not tipping any scales. He is simply a part of the world he lives in. And it's a really interesting way to kind of philosophize, if that's the thing, you know, reason with yourself that you're murdering people. And that never, fortunately, really lets up. He is just this cold dude, and I think it's great. Like a few of Fincher's films, are our lead, I don't think, has a name. I think he's just the killer in the credits, if I remember correctly.
That's correct.
Because it's impersonal, right? And it's really a treat to watch this guy globetrot and what would like otherwise be almost like a secret agent movie. Almost reminded me a little like a James Bond film, like the way he moves around the world, uses alternate IDs, like to pass through airports unannounced. He smashes cell phones like 9 times in this movie, like just very efficiently moving through resources to be as leave as little footprint as possible and just be like a shadow, right? Just like a gust of wind. Like that's what he wants to be. Somebody unnoticeable and unremarkable. And then inside you find somebody who's like completely fascinating.
Yeah, it reminds me of like John le Carre novel, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, kind of. That's very slow paced, very methodical. You know, it's not stylized spy work or, you know, wet work as they often call it. It's very very methodical, very realistic. Of like, I have to scope out this location for like several days, if not weeks. Find a way, you know, into the building, out of the building. How do I get my weapons in place? How do I make sure I have all my equipment? How do I make sure I'm eating and, you know, sleeping and not missing the thing? And yeah, he's got all these, again, fake IDs. He gets guns, you know, and it's kind of the stereotypical, like how we would imagine like a highly paid assassin to do, but it does a very good job of having that cinematic realism where he still has to deal with every day. Like, he's got a fly commercial and he's got to get through customs, and he's got to have money. He's got to buy equipment and get rid of equipment. So it does a really good job of really putting this in a very realistic, grounding it really.
Yeah, and like one of the things that's like really delightful, I think, to watch in a Fincher film is like efficiency made manifest, because Fincher's a very efficient director. Like he's somebody called him once a shut up and shoot it director. Like, while it seems like he's going out of his way to frame something really effectively, like a lot of times he'll have a second unit pick up stuff that otherwise would look, you know, unremarkable, and it comes out looking great because he's like, no, just set the light there, shoot that there, use this lens, boom, and like it just comes together really clean. And I think, along with our man's choice of music, I mean, unless that comes in the graphic novel, couldn't tell you if it does or not. Like, I think Fincher maybe like sees echoes of his own like work methods in this character, and so seeing somebody who's just like really exacting and very specific with how they're performing actions, but so decidedly, right? Like, is something that he and I think Fassbender like really connected with, because Fassbender just gets lost in it, man. It's really great to watch. Like, don't get me wrong, I think Fassbender's got a lot of talent, and I'm sure he's great in Taika Waititi's new feature. But like, I like Fassbender so much more in like action thriller than I do comedy. Like, he's so great. Like, he's got the he's got the clenched jaw, the cold eyes. Like, man,
so dreading that movie, which I feel
what
like we're probably gonna have to see. Next Goal Wins, the Taika
next goal
Waititi
wins? Oh, I
with
know.
Michael Fassbender.
You think
Yeah,
yeah,
he's so. I was gonna say Fassbender's so good in this, and he carries most of the movie. I was gonna say it's broken up into I think 6 unique chapters as we kind of wind our way through the story, and he kind of climbs the ladder to kind of take care of everyone he needs to take care of to be a free man, and so we navigate kind of a really interesting cast of characters, and no one has a name. It's just like the killer, the expert, the client, the lawyer, these kinds of uh, almost archetypes.
yeah. Like, everybody's just kind of this like tremendous version of an idea of who they would be. Um, Score from Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, not their best, but not bad. In fact, it actually takes a pretty active role in the film, which was nice. It's a lot of tense moments where it'll kick in loud in the middle of what's an otherwise quiet scene, and will preempt action in a way that I think is like really satisfying. Reminded me a lot of like a John Carpenter score, big synths, boom boom, like They Lived, reviewed not that long ago. Otherwise, not all that remarkable. But I think what is remarkable is that this movie is uh, only in films on theaters for a week, and then goes straight to Netflix. And like, man, Fincher's got to get away from Netflix, and it kills me. He's got 2 more movies to go. I'm glad
Oh
they're
man,
funding him. I really am. But like, it's tough because
get a
David
proper
Fincher's a big
studio.
director. Yeah, he's the guy who directed Seven and Fight Club and Gone Girl, and like, he's in theaters for a week. It's the same thing they did with Ryan Johnson's Knives Out trilogy, right? Like, they said, we'll buy you 2 more movies, but we get to dictate how they go. So Glass Onion was in theaters for a week, and that sucks. Like, Glass Onion would have had a great run. I don't know if The Killer would have done that good, but it certainly would have done better than it has. And it's tough watching Apple put Scorsese and Scott in big theaters. God, Napoleon's coming out Thanksgiving, an Apple Plus picture. And meanwhile, like, David Fincher's stuck in the back seat on The Killer, and yeah, I don't know. The
Totally
product placement was pretty extreme too. Andy pointed that out during the movie. He's like, this is like the 8th ad we've seen. It's
What?
like, yeah, it's true. It's a lot.
Well, I that was the last thing I wanted to comment on. This movie we have our story of our killer, but it's really in another ways it's an indictment of kind of late stage capitalism. That's part of the reason there is so much product placement. At first, I just thought, oh, they must be playing. McDonald's is paying to get their name in here, but there are a ton of companies shown, and it relates to things happening in the story that we can't get into, but that's part of the parallel of what's happening, because part of why everything goes wrong for him is just greed from the people involved, and while it's not legitimate businesses, it is that greed that causes all of this harm and these deaths, and it's kind of paralleled with all these companies that are name dropped in the movie.
Yeah. It's it's a cool movie, and I wish I could tell more people to go see it in the theater, but I can tell you to go see it on Netflix when we get to recommendations, which I think is about where we're at. I don't want to say too much more. I think we've done a good job of kind of towing around the plot so you can get in and enjoy it for yourself. Andy, would you recommend The Killer?
Absolutely. Really fun movie, really engrossing. I was on the edge of my seat. Like, I had to go to the bathroom really bad during this, and I just was not going to get up and go because I just was afraid I was going to miss something. But great performance, great mood, action when it comes up, and like I said, a lot of it feels part spy movie, part action movie. It's making some social commentary, a lot of great cameos from actors you'll recognize that we're not going to spoil here, so highly recommend. Catch it in theaters if you can.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. The Killer's cool. You should totally check it out. Solid Fincher movie. Actually, really refreshing. I think after Mank, because that was a big departure from him. That was his dad's old script, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna do it. Black and white, period picture." Yeah, The Killer's him back in form. I hope he gets a bigger budget and can be in theaters longer next time. That's The Killer. God. Now we got to talk about something I've really been looking forward to talking to on the podcast. I'm excited to get into this. Andy, do you mind bringing us in?
It's time for the death of cinema.